So this is the latest in a series of lockdown lounge talks that we've been holding during the last year on everything from local flooding to helping wildlife in your garden, electric vehicles, and most recently a climate change hustings with the political party candidates who were standing in the West Sussex County Council elections last week. And you can view all the past talks on our YouTube channel, and we'll post details on the chat. So we were recording this session today and adding it to the channel too. So I hope everyone is okay with that. So today we're going to be talking about food and why it plays such an important part in the narrative around climate change. We've got three great speakers. We've got Freya Robinson from the Old Tree Market Garden in Ditchling, whose blog is called The Solution is in the Soil, which should be an indicator of where she sees our future. We'll also be hearing from Ed Johnstone of the Sussex Peasant, whose wonderful mobile farm shop you might have spotted and used in Ditchling and in Hassocks. And we're also going to hear from Colin McFarlin, who is a waste advisor for West Sussex County Council. And Colin's going to talk to us about food waste and a new pilot introduced by the council, as well as his thoughts and suggestions on what we can do to avoid food waste. So each will talk for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a chance to hear questions and discuss more. Throughout the evening, we hope we'll share, that you and us will share our tips, apps and website links on food. So please just put them in the chat. So without further ado, shall we go to, I know Freya, you've just joined us. So perhaps maybe Colin, do you want to start as you were here first and you're a little bit more relaxed, give the other two a chance to.
Somebody else joining us?
Okay, Colin, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. What I'd like to do is go through some slides with you. So those of you, if either raise your hand or just tell me, you can see the first of the slides on the screen now, which is the food waste recycling. So we are actually with the technology and it's working. Excellent. Well, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. As you can see, I'm a volunteer waste prevention advisor with West Sussex County Council. And it's about 9-10 years ago now that West Sussex realised that they didn't have the manpower, the staff, to go out and talk to our residents about recycling and to help them improve recycling. So they started this volunteer program. I joined at the beginning, and first of all we had to go on a year's training. It was a year's training on an online course at Brighton University, and every 6 months we have to go back to keep ourselves up to date so that we know exactly what is happening in the world of recycling. So what have we got lined up for you today? Well, let's see if we can get the next slide up. Yeah. So what we're going to talk about is, first of all, where are we now? What actually happens to your food waste now? And how much food waste is there at the moment? And food waste trials, what's happening? What's changing in recycling, as is already planned and going to happen? And then what's the future of recycling? Whenever I give a talk, and I'm happy to come out and give talks to groups about recycling, one of the questions I often get asked is, how much waste goes to landfill in West Sussex, and where does all our food rubbish end up? Well, historically, you were right. When your rubbish bin or black bin was emptied, it really did used to go into landfill because we didn't have any alternatives and we didn't know any better. Pleased to say that that's no longer the case. And now, in fact, your black waste bin is recycled and we send it to a recycling plant. We opened a plant in 2016 and every black bin waste from all over West Sussex, they all go to this recycling plant just outside Horsham. In answer to the question, yes, there is stuff that still goes to landfill. Sadly, not everything can be recycled. It is a fact of life. But thankfully, what goes to landfill is going down. Food waste. We've been doing some analysis of how much food is in your black rubbish bin. And I actually found it amazing that it is a pretty static figure and currently 42.6% of the contents of a black bin is some form of food waste, which is amazing. There's a vast amount of food waste. Also, 19% of the contents of the black bin are in the wrong bin. There are items that could have been recycled and could have gone into your blue top recycling bin in West Sussex. Remember, we measure all the measurements we take and all the figures you see and percentages you see when it comes to waste is all based on weight. It's the weight of the items. Now, it doesn't take a scientist or anyone special to realize that food waste is actually quite heavy. So actually, it is a bulk of it is the weight, but not necessarily as far as volume goes. But nevertheless, there is an awful lot of food waste. So what happens when we send the stuff to the recycling plant in Horsham? Well, when it arrives, top left of your screen, the waste delivery to the reception hall, the first thing we do is we pick up all those black bags you've used. So the black waste you put inside black bags, tie it up, maybe double wrap it, maybe triple wrap it, is not a problem to us at all. In fact, we're delighted if you put your black bin waste inside plastic bags because it keeps it all together and stops it going all over the place until we're ready to sort it. Not so the case on your recycling bin, where you should never, ever put stuff in plastic bags. Right, what happens to it? Well, the first thing we do is we shred it. We drop it into a massive, great shredder. So hence it doesn't matter they're in plastic bags. And we shred and mechanically separate it. We take out all the bits of paper, all the bits of plastic, the black plastic bags you've been using, for example, and we actually turn those into refuse-derived fuel. What they are is very small fuel pellets that are then used in industry to fire the furnaces of industry, which can operate on refuse-derived fuel rather than on coal or coke, which is better. We take out the metal with a very, very large magnet. Not much metal in there, usually about 2%, 3%. And then we're left with all the food waste, the biodegradable waste. So what happens to your food waste currently? Well, it currently gets fed into an anaerobic digester, very large digestion system, which turns it into two products. One is energy in the form of electricity. And thanks to your food waste currently, we are able to produce enough electricity to power about 10,000 homes. And that energy, of course, is sold back into the national grid. What we're left with, as you'd expect from food waste, is a compost-like output. It's not a really high quality compost, but nevertheless, it is a compost. It's a good compost. And in fact, we often use it in West Sussex for the parks and gardens, etc. So that's what currently happens to your food waste. So food waste, where are we now? Well, the black bin waste, before we can trial or do anything about recycling food waste, we've got to know where we are now. We've got to establish a baseline. In other words, are we going to, so that we see we're actually improving? The total black bin waste, about 28,500 tonnes a year, and the total food waste, as I say, that percentage is about 12,000 tonnes. And would you believe out of that, edible food is about 29%, and inedible food about 13%. Edible food, we see, if you ever get a chance to visit the factory, if they ever manage to open it again after COVID, I get to go there for our training. And down the line, you'll see bobbing along loads of apples and loads of potatoes. Don't know why, but people seem to throw loads of those away. Of the food waste, interestingly enough, only 21% could have been composted, because the food waste includes meat products as well. For example, chicken bones, which you can't compost, but which is definitely a food waste. So that's what is the current situation. And those figures that I'm quoting you there actually belong to Arran District Council, one of the district councils in West Sussex, because as we speak, they are trialling food waste collections in Arran District Council. What they're doing is they are using 1,150 households covering different housing types and different demographics. So we need to know, for example, people who have got a house with a very long drive, people who live in flats, to test and find out how the food trials go. It's going to be a year-long trial because, believe it or not, recycling is very much seasonal. It does vary throughout the year, and I guess pretty obviously if I said Christmas is a busy time for our recycling, so we need to know exactly how it's going to work throughout the year. But we're going to be taking measurements and tests throughout the whole year. Also, we're trialing optional nappies and incontinence waste products. The reason it's optional is quite simply if you don't produce nappies or incontinence waste products, there's no point in us giving you a separate bin for it and trying to collect it every week from you. So basically, if you do have those products, you'll simply be able to opt in to have them taken away separately. How it's working in the trial is there's weekly food waste recycling. They're retaining the existing fortnightly recycling bin, the blue top bin, and it'll be every 3 weeks the general rubbish will in fact be collected. The reason for 3 weeks is there'll be nothing smelly in your black bin at all, because the smelly bit is all the food waste. So there should be nothing smelly in your bin, and on top of that, of course, there'll be considerably less of it. So that's the trial that's going ahead at the moment. It started, as I said, last month, and we're going to be seeing how that goes. When that was finished, we'll come up with the answers, and then we will be rolling it out throughout the whole of West Sussex. So food waste will be collected soon. In fact, what is changing? Well, as you know, we are currently collecting small electrical items alongside your black bin. You can put out in a plastic bag small electrical items and batteries, and they will be collected by your bin men. Food waste will be collected by West Sussex by the end of next year. That is what is planned. We're also planning for clothing to be collected by West Sussex by the end of next year. Also, we're currently doing a trial at Horsham Household Waste Recycling Site. That's the tip to you and I. We're doing a trial at the Horsham tip, and it's going to be in June or July. We're just finalising it now, and as waste prevention advisors, we're actually involved in it. What they're going to have, they're going to create like a pop-up shop at the entrance to the tip. And as people drive up, they're going to be invited to by saying, look, have you got anything you're throwing away, which does actually work, is perfectly good, but you just don't want it anymore, so you've got no other way of getting rid of it. And we can, rather than put it straight in for recycling, we can put it into a shop and work our magic on it from there. Manufacturers are changing their packaging. I'm sure you've noticed it already in the supermarkets and the big stores. The amount of packaging is being reduced quite dramatically, and that's going to continue, thankfully. Amazon has already changed its packaging. I'm sure we'll all remember the days of Amazon parcels, whereby you got a very, very big cardboard box, and when you opened it, there's loads of polystyrene little nodules and a little packet inside of whatever it was you'd ordered. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. And nowadays, Amazon are packaging them much more economically, and packing them, they're using ordinary brown paper, which can be recycled. And in fact, they're buying recycled brown paper to use. Bingo, benefit all round. On top of that, the tape that's being used by Amazon is actually a paper tape. So if you're throwing an Amazon box away, you don't need to worry about removing all the plastic tape because there isn't any. It's now a paper tape. Mentioned manufacturers reducing packaging. Well, so are the supermarkets as well. So again, you'll see that in the supermarkets. So recycling for the future. What have we got for the future? Well, personally, my view is we're going to find supermarkets are going to accept more items for recycling. We know that I know they're currently carrying out trials in different parts of the country. Every of the major supermarkets is carrying out trials about collecting different items for recycling rather than it go into the black bin. There will be a plastic packaging tax introduced from April next year for any products which do not have at least 30% recycled content. This is the government's way of saying you must use recycled products and not new plastic all the time. So they're introducing a tax which will be in place from April next year. And the government have already outlined earlier on a couple of weeks ago, next steps to introduce a deposit return scheme. This is the idea that there will be available, probably in supermarkets again, the ability to take back, for example, plastic bottles and get some form of credit back. So I hope I've given you, in a brief sort of 15 minutes, a bit of an overview of the food waste, where we are now, what happens to it, what's going to happen to it, and the trials that are taking on now. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions at the end of the evening when all the other speakers have finished. Happy to answer questions on food recycling or on any aspect of recycling at all. More than delighted to. Right, I'm going to close my screen down now and hand you back over to Astrid. Thank you, Astrid.
Thanks so much, Colin. That was brilliant. So yeah, I mean, if you could either put questions in the chat or wait till we finished hearing from our speakers. I think it'd be really good to hear from Freya now, because she's the person who's growing all this food, which hopefully we won't be wasting. So do you want to talk to us a little bit, Freya, about who you are, what you're doing, and why it's important?
Hey Astrid, yes, I would love to. I've made a little presentation and I haven't practiced it, so hopefully it's not going to go over or under, but we'll see. And also I'm outside and it's kind of windy, so if it gets too noisy I can go inside, just let me know. Can everyone hear me okay here? Yeah, good. Okay, let me, I'm also really still new at this, surprisingly, despite all of COVID, so I need to work out how to do screen share. Oh yeah, it's the button at the bottom. Right, and I want to do this one. Let's see if this works. Oh wait, that's not the beginning. Go back to the beginning. There. Okay, can everyone see?
Yep,
yeah,
great. Yep.
Okay, so I've titled it Food for Health and Earth Repair. I'm going to try and fit it in really, really quickly in 10 minutes. So how do I press next? There we go. Okay, so I'm Farmer Freya is what I've coined because it's nice alliteration. I just wanted to say I'm not from a farming background because I think lots of farmers nowadays are. I found farming in my early 20s after being quite miserable and not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life. And I keep saying today, I can't believe no one ever tells kids at school that they can be farmers, especially nowadays anyway. My farm is called, that I'm just starting, is called Old Tree Market Garden, and that comes from my partner's business, Old Tree, which is a brewery and also a soil testing business that he's just starting. And they also collect compost, which followed on quite nicely from Colin talking about compost. It's really interesting to hear about that because Tom is basically setting up Old Tree Compost Club, where they're collecting food waste from people's homes in response to the fact that the councils have cut food waste collections in a lot of areas. So yes, okay, to the next bit. So this is the farm. I'm starting at the Max Farm, if any of you know it, in Ditchling. And I've been looking for land for about 2 years. I finally found somewhere that was appropriate, and the family are just absolutely lovely. I couldn't have asked for a better place. Sorry, the dog's barking in the background. And yeah, it's just in the process of getting started. I thought I would be done by now, but it's just way more work than I ever anticipated, and everything's taking about 5 times longer than you'd think it would. But we're getting there, so there's some pictures of on the way. The polytunnel's a bit more done than that now, which is exciting, but I'm hoping to have vegetables in about 2 months' time if all goes to plan. So yes, eating local food is super important for loads of reasons, and I've just done them a few quick pointers. I think the main one for me was that it provides permanent local employment. So in our rural communities where we're losing our towns, everyone's moving away, the young people move to the cities where they're going to get jobs, and we're losing these little economies around our country, and we're therefore sort of losing touch with our countryside. So by providing lots of little small farms and supporting local farms, you're supporting local employment in your area and saving wildlife and jobs and providing for your neighbours and all the rest. Another reason is that it's a short supply chain. food nowadays is traveling thousands of miles around the world. You just don't know where it's coming from half the time. And, you know, the packets, Egypt and Morocco and Peru or wherever. It's obviously, that's great. Trade is a great thing, but we shouldn't be reliant on these external food systems that are just so unsustainable. If some, you know, COVID obviously all showed us how fragile that system really is, and yeah, we need to support local for the and it also cuts CO2 obviously. And then meeting the people that you actually grow your food. Like we all know, you know, you go into shops and buy food from people. We have no idea who grew it, and actually getting to ask questions directly to the people who grew your food. You can ask them what chemicals they used, if any, and it's just a much better way of doing it. So, and fresh, nutritious food. So our supermarkets are apparently selling us lovely, tasty vegetables, but half the time they take so long to get to us, they don't actually have that much nutrition left anymore. So vitamin C content can decrease massively. Spinach, for example, as soon as you've cut it, it loses 90% of its vitamin C within a day. So stuff that's reached your supermarket shelves is a week, 2 weeks. And then also I only recently learned that probably lots of you already know, that the bags, when they're all full of air, they suck all the oxygen out and replace them with nitrogen in an effort to stop the vegetables reacting with the air and degrading. But that's why as soon as you open the bag, it all just goes limp within about 5 minutes, and a big soggy mess is because actually it's quite old and they've just sort of been preserved in this inert environment. So eating local food is going to be amazing for the farms and also for yourself. It's going to be so much better for you. You'll feel fuller after meals. You'll feel more healthy, more vibrant. You're getting more of those micronutrients that are lost through the long distance. I love data and facts, so I've just included a little list of stuff to do with food nutrition. It's something I've only been learning about in the last couple of years. So I was amazed to find out that lots of people getting admitted to hospital are often malnourished, and it's not necessarily people that look malnourished or who aren't eating well. It's actually often sometimes people that are larger. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, it's likely that you're not getting any of your micronutrients and you're probably not as healthy as you could be. And food in itself has also been declining in nutrition. Over the last 50 years, there was a study that found it was on average about, up to 10 times less nutritious. So I'm having to eat I'm going to have to eat 10 carrots to get what my grandparents got nutrition-wise from 1 carrot, which is a staggering amount, really. So I learned recently that the recommended daily allowance levels, even on food packaging, is actually the lowest amount that our bodies actually need to be able to thrive. So it's really, we need to go way above those levels to be able to actually get our bodies in tip-top condition. So fresh food is another really good reason to do that and help prevent any health problems. So I got really sick. About 2 years ago, I contracted 2 different deadly parasites while I was traveling in India. And I was diagnosed with ME and IBS about a year later when I couldn't get better. And I decided to take it into my own hands because doctors offered me no help. I was stuck in bed. It was absolutely miserable. I'm so happy to be here today, still active. But food was what really, really healed me, and what first interested me to sort of learn a bit more about nutrition. I basically ended up having to cut all foods, and I fasted for 2 weeks and then introduced whole foods one at a time. I didn't eat any I cut all processed foods. If it had been altered, I didn't eat it. And I was better within about a year. It did take a long time, but I did get better. And now I'm farming again. And I'm so interested in being able to bring in the nutritional aspect into farming, because I feel like it's something that's been lost along the way. A lot of farmers that I know, especially conventional older farmers, don't actually have any knowledge about what the food does when it goes into your body, or what effect the chemicals have that they might be spraying their soils or tilling their soils. They don't really know what the 2 departments have been completely separated, and I want to help bring them back together, because it's all one thing really. One thing I stand by, a little mantra: healthy soil is healthy plants, means healthy humans. We're all one. If we can't have one being healthy, the others aren't going to be healthy. And we are all entirely reliant on the health of the soil. Supporting local food and farms means that you can ask your farmers how they treat their soil. You can go and visit their farms. You can see their soil. You can see if the plants are thriving or not. Whether if you're looking at a barren desert, would you really want to be eating food from there? And yes, I'm really happy to be partnering with a landmark study in the UK about nutritional value in foods, because it's not something that's really been measured here. It's been done in America. But there's me and 500 other farms around the UK are partnering in this. We're going to be measuring the nutritional density of the foods that we grow and the weeds, because it's very interesting. If you have healthy soils, your veg should be as healthy as weeds. But because a lot of our soils are so depleted, the weeds actually outcompete, which is one of the problems we've got. Anyway, that's a topic for another discussion. So basically, we need to support our small farms because we need more small local farms around us. We all know that our food systems are really damaging our environment, our cultures, everything. It's becoming such a big problem. So yeah, and actually we're often told the lie that we need big industrial agriculture to be able to feed the world. This is a complete lie. We can actually grow a lot more food per acre as small farms with more intense labor and management and cropping techniques, because on a large scale, you have to do 1,000 acres of something at once. On a small scale, you can have intercropping, you can have different heights, you can mix everything in, so you can actually get a lot more food. The only reason this isn't done is because productivity in farming is measured by in monetary terms, the ratio of input to output. So say you could grow 100,000 pounds of food on this farm with one worker, but you could grow 150,000 pounds of food with two workers. That would be less economically viable. So it'd be more profitable for them to have one worker and just grow the less amount of food in our current economic state. So we actually have the capability to grow loads of food. It's just that money is blocking it, and subsidies and things. But often small farms don't qualify for subsidies. So they're already economically viable on their own and obviously struggling a little bit and need our support. So another reason to buy. I just want to talk a little bit about food waste. I hope I'm not going too over. I'm going to try and be really quick. But I worked in the charitable food sector for a while. I worked for a company called Feedback, who absolutely amazing. You can look them up there. They do loads of stuff to do with changing policy, really. It's lots of really intelligent policy changing stuff. But I was out in the fields dealing with actual food waste with farmer to farmer. So I'd phone commercial farms and find surplus food waste and go and collect it and then donate it to charities and then I'd use volunteer groups. And I found out eye to eye how serious this problem is, as Colin was talking about. Potatoes and apples are some of the hundreds of thousands of tons get thrown away every year. It is insane, just for being too big, too small, a little bit too wonky, salad potatoes at the wrong time. And then apples were, I was always super busy in October when apple season comes in. You have basically it's not economically viable anymore to stretch or to bend to pick the apples off trees. So we would go into the fields after the commercial harvesters have been through, and we would have to have ladders and then have people crawling on the floor because they would be getting all these apples weren't that high up. But anyway, it is completely ridiculous, and this is just what our food system has come to. We're demanding cheaper and cheaper food, and labour's getting more and more expensive, and it's all just not. It's not happening. But Tristram Stewart, the quote at the bottom, is the founder of Feedback, the company I work for. I just thought that was a good quote. So yeah, what can you do at home? There's absolutely loads. There's something I learned recently that a friend told me that I couldn't really believe that I hadn't thought of before. But everything that when you're making a soup or a stock or even just a dinner, all of the ends of things that you cut off, you can actually just turn into stock. So all of the bottom bits of onion, the tops of leeks are really good. The little bits of garlic left over, all the skins are amazing for you. I just put them all in my slow cooker, add some herbs or whatever I've got around or in the garden, and then you can freeze it up and you just got great bases for soup and stock that are really healthy, and you've helped to minimize food waste. And you kind of partially composted them already because they're kind of a bit cooked then by the time you put them in the compost bin. Or yeah, compost, obviously that's a massive thing. Everyone should be composting who can. My partner Tom, as I said, is setting up Old Tree Compost Club. If you're around in Brighton, he's actually going to be setting one up at where I am in Ditchling. So if you're around in Ditchling and Hassocks area, he can collect food waste from your home until West Sussex rolls it out all over the county. He can step in the meantime and do little bits. So he also teaches composting. So if you've got a home compost system where you don't know how to set it up, he's a great guy to go to. You can find him at Old Tree Compost Club. Yeah, use your nose. There's a massive thing in that. Loads of people just throw stuff away before they've actually given it a good sniff. If it smells good, it's probably fine. And if it's something like, that you're a bit concerned about, don't go for it. But if it smells absolutely fine, give it a little taste. If it your body knows. That's what our senses are designed for. So apparently I read recently that 500 million pints of milk are thrown away every year just because they've gone past the date, but are perfectly drinkable. So do what you can, use your nose. And I just did a really quick summary on each side. So why small scale is best, loads of reasons, way more than I could fit on here, and I could go into way more detail about all the nutritional side of it, which I think is really important. And that healthy soil is the backbone of all life on earth. That is number one. If we don't have healthy soils, we're all gonna we're not going to be here. I think I only found out recently that most of the, or thought about it, most of the main sort of big civilizations of our time have all eventually died out because of they destroyed their soils. So we have the opportunity to be able to stop that happening in our time. So let's do it together. And yeah, go to your local markets, do whatever you can. Whenever I do talk about this with people as well, I often hear that the main contender people have is cost. They always say, oh, it's more expensive to buy local, it's more expensive to buy organic. And it is at the moment, but we still have to do absolutely everything we can. So quite a few of my friends just buy, say, get a veg box for £10 a week and then supplement that with vegetables elsewhere. But just pay whatever you can, or even just supporting them, you know, through social media or sharing the word or whatever. Just doing what you can is absolutely amazing, and make compost. That's probably a good ending. So yeah, thank you. You can find out more about me if you look up Old Tree House Market Garden. You can probably just type in Old Tree Market Garden in Google. I think it comes up now. And I'm on Instagram as Farmer Freya. And I've got a blog on there that's got all of the references and more detail. It goes into way more detail if you want to have a read of that. So yeah. Thank you. I was really nervous. I hope that was okay and I didn't talk too fast. Thanks, Astrid.
Thank you so much, Freya. It's wonderful to hear your passion and enthusiasm, and you know, I'm so looking forward to being able to enjoy your produce. And one of the people who will probably be bringing us that produce is Ed from the Sussex Peasant, no doubt. So it seems like a nice segue into hearing from you, Ed.
Hi guys, thanks Astrid. I think it's fair to say that both Freya and Colin have spoken far more coherently and concisely than I will no doubt do. But thanks for having me on. It was just a really good chance to introduce what the Sussex Peasant does and what we're looking to do in the future, and I suppose why. I set up the Sussex Peasant 4 years ago with an effort to get more people connected to where their food is coming from, not just, you know, any food, real food, local food, and connect people to the farms where they're sort of located from. And I just felt that as communities, that supply chains become, you know, further and further apart, and also that we are essentially it became increasingly difficult for people to get access to local food. And I felt what the Sussex Peasant could do is, if we created a cooperative or a group of local producers, we had an opportunity to take local food and create it sort of conveniently and accessible to people in local economies. And we sort of grown from 1 truck 3 years ago. We've now got 4, just about to open up a 5th. So it shows that there is a real demand for local produce. It's just about how we get that local produce to people. And I think it has been in the past very difficult for the consumers to gain access to it, because if you sort of take us out of, say, Ditchling, it becomes very difficult. There's obviously lots of fantastic veg box companies that you can access to, but that's not necessarily always ideal for everyone. I think we've sort of filled a gap to make that possible to lots of people. And for me, I was also driven a lot about the sort of social aspect behind it as well. If we sort of can reconnect people to real food, local food, we've got a chance of creating a community around it, around the producers, around the farms, and sort of creating a shopping experience that people can enjoy and not just dread. And we hope and feel there becomes appreciation for food again. And it isn't just a commodity that we consume and then waste. It is rather seen as a nourishment, like in Freya's case when she went through her illnesses, and also the livelihoods of the people behind the produce themselves as well. So sort of we're creating a story behind the food, which I suppose allows people to really appreciate, you know, what is grown and why it's grown and how it can help us and how it can nourish us. And so it isn't just something, a commodity that fuels us. And it's therefore something tangible. And we believe that if we create something that's tangible and an experience that people can enjoy, then I feel that you know, children become invested into it. It becomes part of a curriculum, it becomes parts of education. And if we can get that enjoyment factor and a sense of realness behind what food is and local food is, then again, it boils down to that appreciation behind it. And when you come to one of our trucks, you know, we are hugely passionate about local food and essentially the farms behind it. And I think Freya's done a fantastic job in bridging that gap between being not only a producer and also someone that can speak hugely passionate about it. But the reality is, in what we've experienced, and before I set it up, farmers are fantastic at farming, and not all the farmers that we work with are particularly as articulate as, you know, Freya is, for example, and they don't necessarily have the time or the desire and the want to talk about the importance of the local produce and the market, whereas we have the passion, but we are sort of more driven to connect people to the produce and to the farms and get people to buy that produce, and I suppose understand the benefit of it in not only sort of the wider environmental impact, but also this social impact of realizing that we're creating local, thriving local economies, you're creating jobs, you're creating a sense of enjoyment. And I suppose I see it as like the Sussex Peasant and the truck is one thing, and then behind it are these veins that everyone is therefore supporting beyond it. And it's, the bit I like to say is that every pound you spend at the Sussex Peasant, for example, 70p of that is going directly to a Sussex producer, and we take the 30p to run our operation. And I think it therefore proves that you're handing over this cost element. Is you're not just buying food, you're buying your health, and you're creating a community and a livelihood and a thriving economy within that area for the people around you to thrive. And essentially, it is this connection to the farms that I'm suppose most passionate about. And with time and with a bit more effort, we can gradually get some of our producers coming down to the trucks as well to really put that face to what local produce is. And I think a fact that is really important is that I note on Astrid's comments about how we do things on a budget too. There also needs to be an understanding of how we value our food and where the value is. Years ago, when my grandparents were sort of growing up, they would spend 40% of their income on food. We now spend less than 8%. So when we say food is it expensive, or are we just choosing to spend our money on other things? And that's something that's really, really important. Well, to me, and before I set up the Sussex Peasant, I was buying food in this way, and I was working in a restaurant on minimum wage, and I was able to do it because I prioritized food. And I think that's something that is really important to families on budgets, and it is more expensive, but there's a reason for that. And also the wider social benefits of investing in that are beyond it, outweighs sort of the extra cost of it, as it were. And I think vitally is that difference that we're spending 8% on food, the cost now in which we spend on our healthcare and our medical bills has gone up astronomically in response. So it's just how we're allocating our budget is what really needs to look at. And even if you put budget aside, let's just really sort of see the benefit of the local food. And I suppose I did pre-warn you, this wasn't very concise or coherent, but then the future of where we want to go is we've seen and had a limited degree of success so far in making it accessible and convenient for people to buy local produce. And it's only really driven me and got me more excited than ever to try and continue on this mission. And a case in point is one of the guys that started joining me 4 years ago, the first guy I hired, now wants to go try and create something similar down in the West Country where he was brought up, so he can go and try and create another hub down there. And I think we're now driven to not only improve and develop what we currently have here, but how do we sort of try and create this hub or local food network in other areas around the country, and identifying farms, small scale farms that are, they're just sort of, they're hugely passionate about growing. And if we get that identity to the consumer, the cost then becomes outweighed by that sort of, you know, desire and interest to want to have a relationship with who and when and what is being grown. So that's really it for me in a nutshell. Thanks, Astrid.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Ed. Well, it seems to me that you were extremely articulate, and personally, you know, I find it a really concise way of explaining the difference between mass production and, you know, the changing cost of food, and the choices that we can make around that. So, and I just wanted to, someone has posted in the chat to say a real big thanks to you and your efforts in supplying us with great fresh and local food, especially during the lockdown. So thank you. So it's over to you really, everyone. Is there anyone who wants to start off? Anybody who has any questions or anything anybody wants to say or comment?
Yeah, I'll start the ball rolling, because there is a question in chat that actually came from Freya, who asked the question in chat. You might also have seen it, but is it any advantage to put to separate our black bin waste and put it into separate black bins? The answer quite simply is no difference whatsoever. Let me explain what happens. Doesn't matter how many black bags you've got in your bin, whether it's one big one or lots of little ones, makes no difference, because all we do is we pick them up and we drop them into a massive great shredder. Now, tell you the story about the shredder. When we first opened the plant, I remember being invited to go around. They actually said, this shredder, said, how powerful is this shredder? I mean, if you're going to put all the black bin waste in, we get all sorts of things in West Sussex, will it shred it? And apparently the shredder was made in Germany, and the German installers were there, and they're so used to this question that they have a little trick up their sleeve lined up. So they said, oh, one moment, and they drove in a mini car. Typical to choose a British Mini, but still a British mini car. The Grab picked up the mini car, dropped it into this massive great shredder, turned it on, and it all came out, engine block and all, little bits, no bigger than about 2 inches long. It's that powerful a shredder. So basically all the stuff you put in, doesn't matter if it's one bag, lots of bags, it literally gets shredded, ripped apart, then it goes through mechanical separation so we can actually recycle as much of it as we possibly can. But as I say, well, you know, in 2 years' time, we won't be having food waste going through that process. We'll be collecting it separately and go straight into an anaerobic digester. So in answer to your question, no, there's no need to separate your black bin stuff. But nice question, Freya. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of you, Colin, about food waste? If the pilot is successful in our, and how soon is it before we're likely to see it here in our part of West Sussex, and also how soon would East Sussex, do you think, be likely to think about something similar?
We've got it already, Astrid.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
The answer to that is thank you. East Sussex have already got it. But to answer your question, is very simple when you look at what's going on behind the scenes. Now, I said I'm a volunteer for West Sussex. I don't get paid by them. So I can tell you exactly what I think and exactly what is happening. And quite simply, the government have said, if you don't recycle food by the end of next year, we are going to impose a very substantial tax on you. Now, I've not said what it is or what it, because basically they want everybody to do it. So all of a sudden, the councils that have got it are thinking, ha, we're ahead of the game. East Sussex, West Sussex, oops, we've got to catch up here. To be fair, they were trialling, it was all set up to trial in mid-Sussex just at the start of COVID. In fact, it was due to start on the 1st of April last year, but COVID put a stop to that. It's all got halted, but it's restarted again with Aaron. So quite simply, if they don't do it by the end of next year, and that's for everybody, it'll be rolled out by then, they will have to pay a massive tax to the government. And that's how the government are pushing recycling. Is that the right way? Is it the wrong way? That's entirely up to you. But the answer, the fact is it works, because all the councils now, all the councils all over the country, you will find, will have adopted food waste recycling by the end of next year, simply because if they don't, there'll be a massive tax there. So East Sussex have got it, West Sussex will have it, they'll have it by the end of next year, otherwise we're paying whacking great tax on it. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Colin. What about anyone else? Anybody else have any questions?
Remember, you need to unmute yourself if you're going to talk, ask a question.
I've got a question.
Lucy.
Hi, I thought that was fascinating. All of the speakers, brilliant. Thank you very much. Really informative and yeah, excellent. My question is really for Freya or Ed. Really, it's about choices when you want to buy food. So, I get a local food box, and it's called Share of the Crop. It's all about food miles. So it's about local produce, which is brilliant. Some people I talk to about that want to know whether it's organic, and some of it is and some of it isn't. I think a lot of the small farmers can't be certified organic, but they're still kind of farming with a lot of that practice in place. But it's putting people off. So there's this argument, is organic better or is local better? And then equally, when you go to a supermarket, you get a choice between organic wrapped in plastic, or you get non-organic and it's not in plastic. So you have to make another choice as a consumer. So whether you want plastic. So sometimes it's very difficult to know what to buy, because everything comes with a not 100% satisfaction. It's not everything all in one. So I'd just like to ask you how you feel about choices for consumers. Either Freya or Ed.
Freya, do you want to go first?
Yep, go for it, Ed.
Or does Freya want to go first? I think maybe it's important. Freya speaks from a farmer's perspective after me, definitely. But I think from my side, what I particularly like about what we do is, which we can definitely do more of, is allowing the consumer to make that decision. In coming to the truck, we are not doing enough of it yet, but we'd like to really be in a position where we can articulate everything, or have sort of better signage on the trucks that really allows the consumer to see how that farm is farming, and whether or not that fits in with the consumer's sort of wider view and wider picture of how things should be sort of consumed and farmed. I know a case in point is where we get some of our fruit from. They're not Oast Farm in Buxted, they're not an organic fruit grower, but we love their farm. We think Bob is great, and he is spraying on some trees which are in need of being sprayed, but he's not spraying everything. And he feels for his production, his business, there's an element that he needs to control the environment, or certain trees that need to be looked at. And I think then that's down to the consumer. And the more, because it's a very small community of growers that we work with, the more time regular customers come to the trucks, they'll get to meet Bob and they'll learn more about his farm, and they'll be able to go and see his farm and take their children to their farm. And then I feel we're creating that community again, and you're making a decision around for yourself what you think is best for you, your health and your family. And regarding sort of packaging, we just don't, it's much easier for us to buy something loose and sell it loose. So we have spinach in plastic bags because we've been going for a couple of years now. For some reason, spinach just does not sell at all when it's loose, whereas every other product does, and it doesn't affect sales for it. Whereas everything you pretty much see on our trucks is without plastic, other than spinach and salad bags, because it just seems to sell a lot better. I think I'm not speaking with a lot of sort of knowledge on this next point, but Freya might be able to. But my understanding is there's very different types of organic farms as well. Like massive organic practices might be farming in a different way to sort of smaller scale farms that aren't organic. And when it comes to animals, organic farmers are still giving their animals antibiotics if their animal is ill, because it's a matter of welfare to some degree. It's just then it's kept out of the supply chain for a slightly longer period of time. So there's a lot more I think organic farms can do as well, are regarding articulating to the consumer about what their practices are, because it might be very different from an organic farm down the road. So I think to sort of summarize briefly, Lucy, it's quite complicated because of all the different practices and all the different types of farms. So I think there's always going to be an element of choice around it. But I do think as retailers like us, I think we can do even more around making it as clear as possible to the consumer about how each of the individual farmers that we work with are operating. And because we have that connection, and because there's a small supply chain, and because you have the ability to go and see the farms, it will be easier in the long run for us all to get to that bottom point.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Ed. Yeah, I think your role particularly is very important for, you know, consumers to understand the bigger picture and the story behind the products that they're buying. So more work from you is brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Freya, I don't know, we lost you there briefly, so I don't know if you picked up all of Lucy's question, but do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, it was a really interesting question. I only lost about 20 seconds. My internet cut out, but I got it back. So, but yeah, no, I really resonated exactly with what you said, because I have this daily, if not every time I go shopping still, because it's always a decision. Do I drive 30 minutes to the local farm? Do I just go to the local shop? Do I then choose organic or non-organic and local? This is a big debate of mine, but I think Ed summarized it all really, really well. You brought up some amazing, perfect points that I would have brought up too, but really articulated well. So yeah. I just think recently, actually, just a point I wanted to add on a personal level, I've recently been reading a lot about, because my partner Tom's studying soil biology now, that actually tilling of the soil is something that is one of the most degrading things we can do. So a lot of the organic farms I worked on tilled, and everyone just assumes we have to cultivate to be able to plant. But it's just not true at all. We can use no-till. And there are lots of farms I now, or it's not as many in the UK, but it is growing in practice, farms that are non-organic but don't till. And then studying this nutrition course on the side, I'm finding it so interesting learning that the farms that are non-organic but cultivated have actually more nutritious veg than a lot of the organic cultivated farms. Okay. So again, I think this comes down to, that was just a really interesting point. So now I'm all for no-till organic, and then you're like step above. Yeah. But I think as Ed pointed out, the most important thing is establishing that relationship and sort of personal connection with the farmer, or the intermediary person who knows them both, I think, as Ed can be. Because for me and for loads of farms, actually selling the vegetables is one of the biggest parts of it. It's about half the job. You can grow the stuff, but selling it is a whole other thing. So being able to have someone like Ed actually be able to be that middle ground, but on a personal level, and for me to be able to go and do an afternoon at Ed's, and where I can actually meet customers as well, would be an amazing opportunity to be able to bridge that gap. Because I always found when I worked at Barkham Nurseries, that you may have heard of, I ran a market stall for them for 4 years in Lewes, and there were so many people that just came to the stall because they knew me, and we've become friends over the years of being there every Saturday. And quite a few people even just said to me, like, I just like coming here to see you, I want to support you. And I've realized that from that in other aspects of my life. You like going to the certain shop when there's that cashier that you know really well, or you like going to your hairdresser because you have great chats, and it's all these personal connections, and being able to get that with our food, which we've lost so much, is super important. So gone a bit of a tangent, but great question. Basically, yeah, know the farmer as much as you can.
Brilliant, thank you. Good answer.
Lucy, sorry, Lucy, can I just pick up on the point you made about the plastic bags?
Yes, please.
Yeah, you're right. Some produce has to be sold in a plastic bag. But the good news is, of course, you can take it back to the supermarket, whether you've got it from that supermarket or not. They recycle their plastic bags. I'm sure you've seen the Waitrose, Sainsbury's or Tesco's plastic bag recycling bins. Well, there's also lots of other plastic produce can go in there as well. And certainly salad bags, the bags that fruit and vegetable come in, they're all made out of what we call stretchy plastic, and they can all go straight back to the supermarket, and they will in fact recycle them.
Brilliant, that's great.
Take them back to the supermarket. They want them.
Colin, interesting point too. I mean, you mentioned plastics earlier on too, of course, which now these days, rather than just finishing up in landfill, which was so appalling, you're mentioning actually now they're finishing up in this refuse-derived fuel. So of course, in a way, that sort of helps helps us sort of understand that perhaps plastic used in that way is not quite so evil as it has been portrayed.
Yeah, it's not as bad in the sense it's not going to landfill. It costs money to produce them into the refuse-derived fuel. It does. When we say we sell it, it costs us more to produce than to sell, but it avoids it going into landfill, and that's the key thing. But the plastics, yeah, there's a question of it either recycling, as in can it be used again and again and again? And certainly, if you take the plastics back to the supermarket, they will make them into more plastic bags, as simple as that. If we turn to refuse-derived fuel, it ends up in a furnace, so it's only got one journey. But that then is better because they're not using coal or coke, fossil fuels, to fire the furnaces of industry. So yeah, plastic is not all bad. Plastic isn't such a problem as it seems to be, basically because we're now tackling it a lot better, and we're recycling an awful lot more of it as well. Hope that helps.
From a retailer's point of view as well, I think it's really helpful when customers bring back egg boxes. Like you've got a lot better at bringing back carrier bags. That's like part of the habit. But egg boxes and maybe that plastic bag that you got from the supermarket, bring that to put your vegetables in, because we've got everything loose. And aside from it, suppose less things go into recycling, also it's a big cost to our business, which we do then have to put on to the customer in some degree. You know, last year we spent like £2 grand on egg boxes, which is not big for a lot of companies, but that's quite a lot of money through the year. And over 10 years, that's 20 grand, which perhaps we could, be fueling other things and making our business more streamlined and better. And things like bags, there's no end of things that you can put mushrooms in, tomatoes in, potatoes in. And I think if we're already taking a carrier bag to shop with us, it'd be great if you can also remember, we need, again, that's more like marketing and signage, and it's more things that we should be doing, but just a thought while we've been on the topic, that makes a massive difference to a small business like ours, but also I think it makes a massive difference to the wider picture. And I think it's other parts of the world do it, so I don't see why we can't do it. If we just got into this habit of not getting into that process, so it's not a romantic idea of, oh, I can't, it's just that we're refusing to do it. So I think it's something that we really can do and make a real difference really quickly without sort of legislation, without government telling what to do. It's just something that can just be done straight away tomorrow. And I think that's something for no cost to anyone. We've already got an egg box, we've already got bags. And I think that's something which, little habits like that, if you look at that across a wider spectrum of people and a wider sort of shop, shopping habit, that's a really easy win. And I think that will not only affect our business, it has a knock-on effect to us. Colin is recycling, it has a knock-on effect to the way Freya might farm. It's a really easy solution.
Would it help, Ed, if we put out a plea in the newsletter for people to drop off their empty egg boxes with you?
Yeah, that would be amazing. And things like the brown bags, I don't think they're necessarily the best thing for us to be creating as a community and as a sort of, I don't know, I read something interesting the other day about how actually brown paper bags aren't the best thing for us to be sort of making, particularly when it rains, they all get ruined and we have to throw them away. So it's not the most useful item either. So yeah, egg box would be great.
Great, of course. And I wanted to ask Freya, when are we likely to see your produce on Ed's mobile farm shop? When are we going to be able to buy your?
Yeah, sorry, it's quite windy, so let me know if you can't hear me. But I was hoping by now, but sadly everything is taking me a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. I'll definitely have some in the summer. Everything's sort of riding on other things being finished. I'm at this kind of annoying point, but hopefully I'm hoping within 2 months there'll be something at least, even if only just a salad bag.
Brilliant, thank you. Has anyone else got any comments or anything they want to?
I've actually got a question for Colin, if it's okay.
Go ahead then, Barbara.
We've been, Tom and I we're doing a lot of bars over the years and working in various, with drinks, those PLA cups and all of the so-called home compostable plastic that we test, and basically pretty much all of it is non-home compostable, and they're all actually made to be able to compost in massive industrial facilities, which I don't think really have many of, and aren't necessarily that great anyway, because they're not really composting in a very nice way, I don't think. Do those have to be separated, or can they go through your plastic, the same sort of path as plastic goes through? Because I think they're not recyclable, is that right?
Fred, very good question. The plastic cups, they can just go in the normal black bin. They can't be recycled, and we'll turn them into RDF. Now, compostable bags, there's a whole new subject there. It goes back about couple of years, when people belonging to organizations that posted their magazines out in plastic bags objected, the National Trust, the WI, for example, and they realized they shouldn't be sending them out in plastic bags, and they kind of panicked, and they went and put them in compostable bags. The only problem is that, as Freya has pointed out, they are not compostable. If you put them in your home compost bin, I'm very sorry to tell you, in a year's time, when you come to turn it over, it'll still be there, because they were made for industrial composting only, and we don't have industrial composting in this country. So pleased to say they have now changed it. It's now changed, and you will find now there are properly compostable bags. And I'm not sure if I've got one here. No, I haven't got one with me. But there is a logo which has got the word Austria in it. And you will find that now on a lot of the compostable bags. And what that is it's actually a company, amazingly enough, from Austria, that came up and invented a properly compostable bag. We actually did some tests on those ourselves as waste prevention advisors. And one of my colleagues said he was very sadly able to confirm it is compostable, because when he put it in his kitchen and filled it up with old tea bags and the usual food waste, when he lifted it out of the container, the bag actually fell apart because it already started to compost. So there are proper compostable bags. The bags you get, which are the so-called industrial compostable bags, that's part of the trial, incidentally, where you may be able to use those as a liner for your food bin in the kitchen before you take it out to your separate compost bin that you'll have to sit alongside your other recycling and black rubbish bin, and maybe a garden bin if you subscribe to one of those. So yeah, the answer is no. They're a nuisance. You'd have to put them in your black bin because they're not plastic. They don't react the same way as when we extract them, because they seem like plastic. They don't react the same way, and that causes a problem when it goes to RDF, as a matter of fact. But thankfully, there's so few of them that the percentage of them it doesn't affect the end product. But it's a national product. It's a national problem. Everybody went overboard for these compostable bags, and they weren't really compostable at all, as you discovered, Freya. So we're slowly working our way out of those. They are starting to disappear now and replaced by a properly compostable bag. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Colin. Did you want to come back on that, Freya?
Just thank you. That was kind of what I assumed. I thought that they would be a problem, and we've kind of come to the point. It's either use cups that are sort of a deposit if you're at a bar, so you pay 50p to use a plastic cup, or bring your own cup. And yeah, just get rid of them all. Because I think I think you already brought it up, but the other thing we were using at the last farms were those. I was even trialing them when I was working there. Salad bags that are home compostable, and we tried all these different corn-based and thistle-based and things, and they kind of just don't really do. They kind of, some of them break apart, but they don't really do anything. But yeah, I've got to the point where it's, as Ed was saying, it's actually much better, even using paper or whatever. It's better just to come with your own containers. If you've got some really good sealed Tupperware containers that last for 20 years, if you look after them, that's actually way better for the environment than having to have all of this waste, random home compostable.
Thank you. Barbara, you wanted to say something.
You need to unmute yourself, Barbara.
Oh.
No, you need to unmute yourself, Barbara. We can't hear you, Barbara. Find the little microphone and click on it.
That should be okay now.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I'm not used to being in a group where I'm muted. That's the trouble. I wanted to say thank you, because it's been great listening to three such knowledgeable people. And Colin, I just had no idea at all about, there are so many encouraging initiatives going on in supermarkets, and the paper tape from Amazon, which I had painstakingly taken off my parcel yesterday, and I thought it felt different at the time, actually, so that's great to know. Freya, I wish there was more indication when we're buying fruit and vegetables and so on about if things are local or not. I've been shielding for a while, so have been quite reliable on having deliveries. And I was horrified the other day because I ordered a butternut squash and it was actually from Argentina. And I just felt so guilty when I saw the label, but of course I had no idea. And Ed, I have to tell you that I have an enormous bag of egg boxes all ready for you. I meant to bring them up on Sunday, I think it was, but I got waylaid, but they are on their way to you. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything that anybody wants to come back on there? Colin, you look like you're speaking. No? No. Are there any websites or apps that people have come across that they wanted to share? We shared a couple at the beginning, and Freya, you mentioned feedback. I've put the web address up there. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about what it is and what it does.
Yeah, it's quite a broad ranging thing, but basically this guy Tristram Stewart got really into food waste, realizing how much food is being wasted across all of the chains, right from farm gate to at the farms, the middlemen, and then all the way to supermarkets, and then also when we get home, and also in restaurants and the rest. And he did a big feed the 5,000. He put on in the middle of London. He did a dinner for 5,000 people that he cooked just with surplus food that would have just been going to landfill or other waste streams. But and from that, he started up a bit of a movement. It's become a whole company called Feedback, and it's all about changing food policies within the UK. So like I brought up milk earlier, they have a whole section about milk where they're trying to change. I think they've actually been successful in some ways, change milk from use by to best before, because that does make apparently a massive difference for people to just read it and think, oh, it's best before, I will give it a sniff, rather than just chucking it away. And they're involved in various other sort of food things to do with salmon fishing, and also about feeding food waste back to pigs, and various things along the whole way. But what I was doing was gleaning, which is a really old word for where the village people would go along after the farmer's harvester, picking up all of the leftover food. And that was just like a done thing, and there was a word for it in our language, gleaning. So we, part of Feedback was actually working with volunteers to go out onto these farms and basically do exactly that. And it's an absolutely amazing. We've saved hundreds. Well, I say we. I only did a tiny bit, but collectively saved hundreds of thousands of tons of food from going to waste, and it's all distributed to the local communities as close as it can be. So I work just within Sussex, but it was absolutely staggering the amount of food that is wasted. The worst one is that there's they're amazing, a blueberry farm in Chichester. We have blueberries in Chichester at probably over 100 acres of glasshouses of polytunnels of blueberries, and there were tens of thousands of tons of blueberries going to waste at the beginning of COVID, because all of their supplies, suddenly people stopped buying them. I don't know, and because they could only sell in pallets, they couldn't sell them in smaller quantities, so they could only deal with these massive supermarket buyers. So suddenly their whole operation had 800 employees, and suddenly they can't get their blueberries out. And so we turned up. We managed to save some, but insane amount. Anyway, sorry, I was rambling, but it is incredible the amount of food that is wasted in the UK at the moment.
And I know that some towns are starting to have community fridges, aren't they? I don't know what people think about that kind of thing in our local area, whether or not there's a desire for some of these initiatives, that more sharing of food, maybe some kind of food event that we could all come together on and do some food sharing between us. I don't know, has anyone got any thoughts about that?
I like the idea. You could have a solar powered fridge in the middle of Ditchling that just powers itself and has a little, yeah, I think it could work. I always think if anyone needs to steal vegetables as well, then it's, they need them. So I think if it's by an honesty way, I think that could work quite nicely.
I know I'm part of a group in Hurstby Point called the Hurst Rethink, and that I'm not part of the initiative that looks at food, but I know they have been talking about doing a fridge for the local community. So I think that's definitely something that could be pursued. It's a great idea.
On Freya's point and Colin's fascinating 42% of food waste, I think maybe when we are in discussions with like family and friends and whoever we're talking to, we've been working for the last couple of years, not enough yet, because it's like, I suppose the logistics a bit difficult, but there's lots of really enterprising food banks now, and I think we give bear in mind, I suppose when we come to the end of our week, the food's still only like 4 days old, so it's still, well, that's what I eat, but it's still very fresh and still really good, so we give it. But I think they are very open to taking a lot more stuff, and that's just maybe another thing that we as a community and society aren't aware, that it's actually very easy, and food banks are very welcome to take, even if it was just like 5 apples, 10 carrots and potatoes, which are the key things. That would go a long way to, I think, many food banks. There are some, I think, which have slightly stricter, like, I suppose, procedures around what can come in. But if you do a little bit of digging, there's a lot, I think since COVID as well, there's a lot more kind of sort of pop-up food banks that would be very willing to take anything from people that have wastage.
Can I add to that? I wonder how many of you ever heard of or looked at the app called Olio, Olio. Anyone heard of it? Right, let me
I've seen the name.
Yeah, let me give you a brief explanation. Very simply, if you Google it and have a look at it, it is simply an app where if anybody has any food that they don't want, they put it on this app for free. Everything has to be free. There's no cost involved. They put it on this app for free, and then it appears, and anyone else who's on the app system gets an update to say there's food available in your area, and you can set the geographical parameters. I've set mine to sort of 1 mile. And then if anyone's got any food they literally don't want, they put it on the app, and then anyone can then just get in touch, say, yes, I'll come and collect it 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thank you very much. And you just turn up and collect it for free. So that's a very good way of moving food that is quickly going out of date that you don't want. It's used a lot now by supermarkets. So when you go on it, you will invariably find there's lots of pastries and bread from the Co-op, Sainsbury's or Waitrose, because they're using it rather than having to throw it away. They're advertising it for free on Olio because they can't give it away in the shop. That wouldn't work, would it? So they do it through Olio, and it's available free. So you can go on that app and collect it. Have a look at
Colin. Molly has posted that the Real Junk Food Project in Brighton is doing great work, and she also mentions Too Good To Go, which is a really good app. And the local ones here are Bake Off and Hassocks, and you just post that you want to buy it. I think it costs £3.99, and you get a bag full of it. It is bready products, sort of croissants and loads of bread and sandwiches and whatever's left at the end of the day that would otherwise go in the bin. And the BP garage up on Clayton Hill, the M&S there, they do it, and I think for £4. Obviously you've got to get there, but and you come away with a great bag full of M&S food for £4 that would otherwise go in the bin. So do you want to say anything, Molly, about the Real Junk Food Project?
Hi, hello. I'm actually tuning in from Wales, but I went to a talk a few months back run by Feedback, and Freya was speaking at it, and so I thought I'd come in tonight. And you guys, yeah, you've all been amazing. You've said some amazing, really, yeah, interesting, great speakers. But yeah, I used to volunteer a bit for them. They've got various kind of pop-up cafes in Brighton, but they also have a food hub in, oh gosh, I've forgotten the name of it now. I used to live in Brighton, but I've been away from there for a while now. But and there they kind of have, I don't know now with COVID times like how it's working, but I think they were open a couple of days a week for people to go, and it's all pay as you feel, so you can give a donation of like what you feel is right, and pick up a few bits that you think you might be able to use or cook with at home. And I remember going like multiple times, and they had like the most amazing, like loads of fresh food, and also just like loads of dried goods. And they even had some like refill kind of stations where you could go and get some like rice or porridge oat, like oats and flour and sugar and all kinds of things. So yeah, that's another really, really cool project. And they've also got, actually more recently, I think in the last year or two, they've started a cafe called Gardener Cafe or something, I think, in Brighton, where they're also cooking up really nice, like nutritious, healthy meals with surplus food for pay as you feel as well, donation based. So yeah, definitely check them out if you guys are able to. Right. Also, actually, sorry, whilst I'm speaking, Colin, I just wanted to double check with you, going back to what you guys were talking about with I missed actually a bit of your presentation at the beginning because I joined a bit late, but these vegware cups that say that they're compostable, they say certified for commercial composting where accepted. So can they not go into home composting? Do they not get composted in like a compost heap at home?
You can certainly try it, Molly, but I fear that in a year's time you'll find your cup still intact in your compost heap, because why it says commercial composting, a matter of interest, commercial composting gets a lot hotter than your compost heap bin that you produce in your own garden. Your domestic compost pile, heap, no matter how well you tend it, create it, make it, look after it, it will not generate sufficient heat to break that item down. And that's why a commercial composting system, which there aren't any open to the public in the UK, so you've no access to it, they generate a lot more heat, and that would eventually break it down. So no, that would just go into your black bin. Now, I say go into your black bin because, of course, we're in West Sussex, and you've just said you're in Wales. Is it? Whereabouts in Wales are you, by the way?
I'm on the Garran Peninsula in South Wales.
Oh, I used to live in Abergavenny. That's the only reason I mentioned that.
I'm working on a community-supported agriculture project, doing a traineeship, and they're doing amazing work. Check them out if anyone ever is in South Wales. They're called Kaitan, and it's a really cool project.
Well, you will actually have to check with your local council as regards what they do. And I noticed your chat on, you put a question in the chat about garden waste. Well, in West Sussex, no, your garden waste cannot go into your black bin. It does not. That really messes up our system. We have a separate bin for garden waste, which you can subscribe to, you have to pay for, or you can take it to the household waste recycling site yourself, where it's free and you can get rid of it yourself. But garden waste doesn't go into your rubbish, your curbside collection bin. But again, you're in Wales, you'll have to check with exactly what they do down there. Because you've been collecting food waste for some time in Wales, of course.
Well, I only just moved here a month ago, but I'm so impressed. Yeah, they've got a really good system in place. All the recycling seems to be working nice and smoothly, so that's good.
Yeah.
That's great. Molly, would you like to put the name of that? Was it Kaito? Did you say that project that you were talking about? Will you put that in the chat?
Yeah, I'll write it in the chat for you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else that anybody wants to ask or mention?
Can I ask one more question? Sorry, to Colin. Recycling bins, there's a risk of contaminating the entire load that's in your bin by putting an item that's dirty in there. Is that true, or is that fiction?
Oh, it's true. It's perfectly true. We recently had the dustbin lorry, like the one behind me, my company car, as they say. That holds about 10 tons. Okay, so when it does the rounds, it collects 10 tons of recycling. From here, it goes to Burgess Hill, to the household waste recycling site, but that is also a transfer station, one of the many transfer stations we have. It's emptied there into the transfer station. We put it then into a bigger lorry, a 40-ton lorry, 40 because it's more economical and it's better for the environment. Put all the stuff in one big lorry. That big lorry takes it from Burgess Hill to the recycling plant, which is down near Arundel. And there it is recycled. However, when that big 40-ton truck turns up, it has to go through checks. First of all, it's weighed, so we know exactly how much recycling we're getting in bulk. And secondly, it is inspected. They inspect a portion of it. And recently, we had one 40-ton truck that had got water into it. It got rain into it because they hadn't put the cover on properly. Therefore, it had got wet inside. The cardboard, the paper had got wet, and the whole truck had to turn round, was rejected, and had to go up to Horsham and had to go through the waste process there, which costs money. Bear in mind, if we take recycling in West Sussex, everything, you use the word recycling, lovely word. We use the word resell, money, money, money. Everything in that recycling bin, we sell. And we actually make a profit, not much of a profit, but we actually make a profit on the recycling. However, the black bin stuff costs us money, way, way more than the cost of what we get out of recycling. So there is a net cost to getting rid of your rubbish, which is to be expected. Therefore, the more the correct stuff we can get in the recycling bin, the better. So Yes, it does happen. We get a situation where people have, believe it or not, a can of beans and they leave half the beans in the can and think that's okay to recycle it. And the beans come out and they damage, they contaminate all the newspaper, the cardboard, they go all over the plastic bottles, the plastic in there and the glass bottles, and that ruins that load. It's as simple as that. So sadly, it does happen. Contamination isn't a big problem for us, thankfully, because contamination's currently running about 6%, 7% in mid-Sussex. So that's an acceptable level, 6%. The business can cope with that. We're used to that. But contamination is a problem. So yeah, everything in your recycling bin must be clean, dry, and loose, and take the tops off the bottles as well. Advert over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. Now I'm aware that we're kind of nearly out of time, and I'm also just a bit concerned that we're all inside. And I know she's a hardy farmer, but Freya is outside and not moving around doing any farming things. So it must be getting a bit chilly out there, Freya. So I just want to say a huge thank you for all the food for thought. Sorry about bad pun. But thank you, Freya, thank you, Colin, and thank you to Ed. And, you know, it's brilliant that we have you and we have these local people who are doing so much for us. So thank you. And thanks, everyone, for being here tonight and for your questions and your discussion. So thank you.
Can I just mention again about the recording? So hopefully everybody's happy with the idea that we have recorded it. And that means it will finish up on our YouTube channel, HKD Transition YouTube channel. If you want to try and then there'll be a link you could then pass on to other people if that were relevant.
That's brilliant. Great. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you for your time. Thank you. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.